Hello, welcome to another reading wrap up, and this time I'm wrapping up all the books I read in January. Actually, I'm also going to be wrapping up 3 additional books that I read at the end of December, because for my December reading wrap up I only talked about the books that I'd read up to the 22nd of December, just so I could record that video early and make sure I got it up to you on time. So I have actually got 3 books to talk about that I read at the end of December, as well as all of the books I read through January. So as always, I'm just going to give you a few stats just to kick us off, and then I'll launch into the books. Now I do have 19 to talk about, so in total I read 19 books over 40 days, so that's from the 23rd of December right through to the 31st of January. So that's 19 books in total. I read 6,434 pages, which equaled to about 160 pages per day, which is usually the average of kind of what I managed to get through in a month. Now, in terms of how I read these books, as usual, the majority of the books I read were Kindle Unlimited. So I read 12 Kindle Unlimited books. I had 2 ARCs, 3 ebooks, so those were ebooks that I physically purchased, and then 2 audiobooks as well. In terms of the ratings for the book, so this year I've actually introduced half stars because I wanted to give it a bit more breadth to my ratings, because the majority of the books that I read sort of came out around 4 stars, and I wanted to just give myself a little bit more wiggle room to kind of really differentiate some books from others and be able to rank them a little bit more clearly than I have in the past. So I've introduced half stars, and if I give something a 3.5 as an example, I round up to a 4 on Goodreads and also Amazon. So just to give you an idea of how I'm rating. So for the 19 books that I read, my star ratings were, I had 1 2.5 stars, 1 3 star, 2 3.5 stars, 9 4 stars, 4 4.5 stars, and 2 5 stars. One of which was a reread though, and I'll let you know which one that was when we get to it. And then in terms of the genres, I had 1 paranormal romance, 1 sports romance, 1 billionaire romance, 1 erotic romance. Then I had 5 dark romances and 10 mafia romances. So in total, 15 out of the 19 books I read were actually mafia or dark romances, which again is pretty standard for me in terms of the types of books that I like to read. Okay, so the first one I'm going to talk about today is Twisted Promises by Lilian Harris, and this one is book 3 in the Messina crime family, and in this one we're following Gio and Isolt. Now this is a mafia romance which I rated 4.5 stars. I really enjoyed this one, and I read this one because I actually had an arc of book 4, which I'll come to next, which was Savage Wounds. I hadn't read any of the books in this series, so through December I read books 1, 2 and 3 so that I was prepared for the arc at the end of the month. But Twisted Promises was book 3, like I say, in this series, and it was my favourite of the series. I really did enjoy this one. Now Gio is the brother of Raf and Michael, and he's part of the Italian mafia, and Michael is the head of the family. He's sort of the oldest brother, and we've seen Michael and Raf have their romances in book 1 and 2. Now in order to bring 2 families together, so they're part of the Italian mafia, but they need to make a truce with the Irish mafia, and as a result Gio is arranged in marriage to Isolt's sister. However, Gio and Isolt already had a bit of a meet cute. So Isolt is unusual in the mafia world. She is a woman, but she's also one of their best sort of assassins, and she's sent in to eliminate their enemies by her father, and this is because she has had quite a traumatic past. She was kidnapped when she was younger. She has been left not only physically scarred but emotionally scarred as well, and she then basically set about training to defend herself, and also kind of persuaded her father that she could become part of the mafia, become this assassin. And therefore she actually met Gio on a job. So she was actually out, and it was her job to eliminate someone, and Gio was actually trying to track down and eliminate the same person, and they kind of have this bit of a meet cute. They get on really well, they spend the night together, but Isolt always very much makes sure that her identity is kept secret. She doesn't really know who Gio is, so she doesn't tell him who she is, and she kind of disappears, and he is absolutely obsessed with her. He spends a year trying to track her down, and lo and behold, when he's introduced to her sister as this person that he's supposed to be arranged in marriage to, he comes face to face with Hazel, and they both realise that they know each other, and then they're in a bit of a sticky situation because Gio doesn't really want to marry the sister. He would prefer to marry Hazel, but if their father, if their family's found out, and if Hazel's father found out, then it would be seen as kind of, you know, a slight on the family, that they'd kind of betrayed the family in some way. And so Hazel is very, very resistant to this relationship. Gio keeps pushing her though, pushing, until eventually things unfold to ensure that they can in fact be together. But I really enjoyed this one. Like I said, it was my favourite of the series. I really liked the dynamic between this couple. I really liked the banter between them, and I just found myself smiling throughout. So then I went straight on to read The Ark, which was book 4 in the Messina crime family. This was Savage Wounds by Lilian Harris, and I rated this one 4-star. This is also a mafia romance. Now, there is a lot that happens in the plot through this series, and by the time we get to book 4, book 3 leaves us on quite a bit of a cliffhanger as we go into book 4. So I don't want to talk too much about kind of what happens, what's going on in the plot, because I think you should read it so for yourself, because there's lots of twists and turns, and I wouldn't want to spoil it. But essentially we're following in this one Adriel and Kayla. Now Kayla we met in book 1. She was one of the girls who were kind of like captured by a really bad mafia group, and then sold or used in basically sex trafficking, sex slavery, and she was eventually rescued. But as a result of being in sort of captivity for 7 years and being very badly mistreated, she is really struggling to kind of live in the normal world, come to terms with what happened to her. And one of her coping mechanisms is to actually be a stripper in a nightclub, because she very much feels empowered by the fact that men in this situation can look at her body, but she's very much in control of the situation, and if she doesn't want them to touch her, then they won't and they can't. So this very much makes her feel a little bit more empowered and a little bit more in control of her own body. And this is kind of, like I say, a bit of a coping mechanism for her. Meanwhile, Adriel is has spotted Kayla, and in fact Kayla has started to become a bit of a vigilante and eliminate bad men. Again, a bit of a coping mechanism. And Adriel is also in kind of like the assassin business. That's what he does. He is a bit of a vigilante. He seeks out bad people and he makes sure that he removes them. And so again, he spots Kayla in the act of doing something, and becomes very intrigued by her and starts to stalk her, and then kind of offers to help her out, show her the ropes as it were, and make sure that she doesn't get caught. And that's how they start their relationship. So this one is very different from the other books in the series. There's less mafia content, I would say. This is much more a darker romance, much more of a stalker romance, and I did enjoy it, just not quite as much as the third book in the series, but like I said, I rated this one 4 stars. So then the very last book of 2023 that I read was this one here, Hands by S.J. Tilley. This is another mafia romance and book 4 in the Alliance series. This is book 4 and the final book, I should say, in the Alliance series. I've absolutely loved this whole series. I recently treated myself to the books from this series, hence I've got a physical copy here. I rated this one 5 stars, really loved it. In this one we're following Hans and Cassie, or Cassandra. Now Hans is a character we've seen in books 1, 2 and 3. He is thought to be a bit of a bad man, and the other guys from the Alliance have been trying to track this guy down, but actually Hans is not as bad as we think he is. In fact, he's kind of on their side, and he has been trying to hunt down these sex trafficking rings and take them out and rescue the women that have been captured. And he's a bit of a one-man band though. He kind of like operates by himself, and he's very much driven by his past because his sister went missing, and now he's kind of devoted his life to getting retribution, seeking retribution on the people that took his sister. Now he is very much been isolated. He hasn't been, like I say, he works very much by himself, and he also lives in a bit of a cul-de-sac where there's a couple of derelict buildings. He's deliberately bought them, no one's moved in, but while he's away on a job, a little old lady across the road from him passes away, and before he gets back, her house is actually sold and Cassie is the one that moves in. Now, had he known that this was going to happen, he would have snapped up this property as well to ensure that he can kind of continue to live alone and no one could watch his comings and goings, but instead he gets Cassie as a neighbour. Now, when he first comes home, he's a bit taken aback, so he isn't prepared for the fact that Cassie's going to pop across the road, introduce herself and say hi, and he instantly really likes Cassie, but kind of like deliberately wants to keep himself isolated, wants to stay away from her. So from there on out, he makes every effort to ignore her, come and go when he knows that she's not going to be around, and doesn't answer the door if she ever knocks on the door. Now, just in this one encounter, Cassie becomes very fascinated with Hans. She tries to figure out what he's up to, where he's going, follow his comings and goings, but she also is trying to be a good neighbour, and she starts to bake for him, and she bakes him lots of like different cookies, different desserts, and she leaves them in a Tupperware on his doorstep. She knocks on the door, he never answers, but she leaves them on the doorstep, and then when she's gone, Hans will take them, eat them, and return the washed container back to her, and this is kind of their only relationship, her bringing him food. Now, the thing is, Cassie's food is awful, it's absolutely terrible, she is not a good baker whatsoever, but Hans is compelled to eat what she brings him because he can't let any of it go to waste, and later on he becomes very possessive over the food that she bakes, and it's really funny. But there is a moment in time where Hans and Cassie kind of bump back into each other again, and all this time he's kind of been stalking her, not like full on stalking, but he's very much been keeping his eye on her, and when she ends up running herself into a bit of trouble, he steps in to kind of save her, and then their relationship really gets going from there. So I absolutely love this one. Like I say, I absolutely love this series as a whole. Don was actually my favourite in the series, but Hans was pretty up there and would highly recommend. Okay, so the first book then that I read in 2024 was Tangling with Trolls by Hazel Mack, and this is book 2 in the Haven Ever After series. It's a paranormal romance, and we are following Ren and Ocken in this one, and I rated this one 4 stars. So basically, this little world that Hazel Mack has written about is very much a sort of a paranormal town. I've described it in the past as a bit of Eureka, like the town of Eureka. Instead of it being filled with geniuses like in that TV show, this is filled with paranormal creatures. We have gargoyles, we have witches, we have trolls, we have vampires, we have fairies, all kinds of magical and mythical sort of creatures live in this town, and it's protected from humans by these wards, and there are 3 sisters that end up discovering a map. The map leads them to this magical town, they come through the wards, and when they get through they find out that they are witches, which is why they've kind of been drawn to this town, while this map revealed this town to them, and while they're able to get through the wards. And in this one we're following, like I say, Ren, and she is one of the witchy sisters, and she's actually an earth witch, so she has so she starts to learn about her power that she didn't know she had before, and starts to learn that she can kind of grow plants and things like that. And then we have Ocken, who is a bridge troll, and he kind of like resides in a cave under this bridge in town, and it's just a really fun, warm, cozy, small town sort of paranormal romance. There is a plot that's running through this about some bad paranormal people that are trying to break through the walls to get into the town and kind of take it out, and the witches are there trying to help the townsfolk figure out what's going on and kind of reinforce the chills. But overall, like I say, this is a really sort of cozy small town paranormal sort of romance. It's really good. Definitely will be continuing on in the other books in the series, and we'll let you know how I get on when I've read them. Then after that I picked up P.S. Youre Intolerable by Julia Wolfe, and this is a billionaire romance. It's book 3 in the Harder They Fall series. I haven't read books 1 and 2, which is really unusual for me because I usually like to read a series in order But Jen from the Book Refuge absolutely raved about this book. She loved it. It was her top book for 2023, and it was already on my TBR, but I thought, you know what, I'm going to pick it up and I'm going to read it straight away. And it didn't disappoint. However, it wasn't quite a 5-star read for me. I rated this one 4 stars. I absolutely see why Jen loved it so much, because it is a really, really good book. My issue was that the hero, Elliot, was just a little bit too sweet for me. So if you really love a sweet romance, two people that absolutely deserve their happy ever after and want to be together, then this book will absolutely be for you. I did thoroughly enjoy it, really, really liked it, but I couldn't give it 5 stars because the hero just wasn't my kind of hero. I like them a little bit darker, a little bit grittier, a little bit more taboo, but absolutely fantastic, like I said. So in this one we're following Kit, also known as Catherine. Elliot, who's the hero in this one, calls her Catherine, but everyone else calls her Kit. And essentially she goes to work for Elliot. So he's the billionaire. He's got his own kind of company where he buys buildings or buys land, and he organises the construction of these buildings, and he turns them into, you know, high-rise apartments, luxury office buildings, and that's how he's sort of made his money. So he is absolutely a billionaire. He gets a new assistant, and that is basically Catherine, and she comes to work for him, and it's called PS You're Intolerable because he is not the easiest boss to work for. He is very precise, he's very exacting, he is very rarely kind to people, he's very kind of pointed, and he is, like I say, is quite a difficult boss to work for. And she starts writing in these little postscript notes that she ends up tearing off the bottom of his schedule, and then she keeps them for herself because it makes her feel better to write these little PS notes, and they are really, really funny and amusing. Now, what we find out about Catherine is that she's actually pregnant. She had a friend who she was very, very close with, not quite a boyfriend, but she trusted him enough. They had a sexual relationship, and she got pregnant, and this guy absolutely let her down completely. Not only has he left and gone back to Australia where he comes from, but he's also left her with a house in disrepair. He's stolen some money from her, and now she's living in a half-finished house. She can't afford to finish doing up. She can barely afford to run it, and with a baby on the way. Now, as we go through her pregnancy, Elliot doesn't really notice she's pregnant till quite near the end, when his friends point out to him that, hey, I think your assistant is pregnant, and then he starts to panic a little bit because he's not sure how he's going to survive without her. And then after she has the baby and she's on maternity leave, he goes to her house one day to pick up some paperwork that he needs, and then he sees kind of the state of her house, and he basically says, you can't live here with the baby, come and stay with me, and I will help you, basically, and it'll be a safe environment for you and the baby, and then I will help you sort this out. And their relationship goes from there. And like I say, Elliot is so sweet. He was intolerable to start with, but he becomes tolerable, very, very sweet, really, really doting, absolutely falls in love with her and her baby, and starts to treat the baby like his own, and so it's really, really nice to see their relationship evolve, how Elliot comes around, and just how things work out between them. So like I say, it is really, really a good book, would highly recommend. So after that I went on to something a little bit harsher, this type of hero that I like to read about, and that is Seduction of the Patriarch by Zoe Blake. This is a dark romance, and it's book 4 in the Cavalieri Legacy series that I've been reading from her. I actually rated this one 3.5 stars, rounded it up to 4 stars on Goodreads. It was the weakest, I think, in the series so far, which was a shame because I love Zoe Blake's books and I love her heroes. This one just kind of missed the mark slightly for me, but still I enjoyed the read and read it all in one sitting. So we're following Benedict and Liliana. In this series, very broadly, the Cavalieri family own this vineyard in Italy. They are all billionaires. They are very, very well known. All of the men in this series are extremely dominant, possessive, don't take no for an answer, very, very forceful with their women, don't give them any choice about the situation, but ultimately are madly in love with their women and would do anything for them. And this is no different, but Benedict is the eldest sort of Cavaliere. He is Baroni's older brother, and Baroni's kind of the head of the family, and the other two books were about his sons. And Benedict is kind of like been living away from them. He's got his own kind of property to the north of Italy. He doesn't come out much, but he spends his time really, he is very much in with the mafia. This is a mafia adjacent sort of series. This family are not in the mafia, but Benedict, it becomes obvious that he's been sort of working for the mafia, doing a bit of assassin work. He's very, very dangerous, very scary man. And when he hears about stuff that's been going on in the other books and that his family has been threatened, he decides he's going to come and exact some revenge and figure out what is going on. And this is where we meet Liliana, because Liliana used to work for the Cavalieres, and it seemed that she was a bit of a spy. She poisoned one of the other heroines in the previous book. She tries to push another one down the stairs. Things were not quite right, and Benedict basically tracks this Liliana down, kind of keeps her captive with the intent of sort of extracting information out of her and then removing her from the situation. Except once he sees her, once he meets her, he decides that he's going to keep her for himself. But still, he needs to get answers out of her, so he does that in ways that I'm sure you can imagine for yourself from this kind of hero and this kind of trope. So like I say, I did enjoy this one, 3.5 stars. It wasn't my favourite in the series though, and you definitely need to check your trigger warnings when you're reading a Zoe Blake book. If those types of heroes are for you, then go for it, and if they're not, I would definitely steer away. So next up we've got The Fixer by Renee Rose. I actually bought this one, I read it as an ebook. It's another mafia romance, and it's book 2 in the Chicago Bratva series. And in this one we're following Maxim and Sasha. So Maxim is now kind of the fixer for the Chicago Bratva mafia, but he used to live in Russia and be part of the Russian cell. But many years ago he was betrayed by Sasha, who's the daughter of the head of the mafia in Moscow, and he was kind of sent away from Russia as a result and sent to Chicago to that mafia cell there, and where he's been doing very well for himself, living very happily. Except now that the head of the Moscow Bratva is now dying, and he needs to make sure that his daughter Sasha is taken care of, and he decides that he's going to summon Maxim back to Moscow and ensure that he marries Sasha. And he does this for a couple of reasons. One, because like I say, in the past she betrayed him, and one of the ways she did that was because she was very much in love with Maxim, but he knew that he couldn't pursue any kind of relationship with her because she's the daughter of the head of the mafia. He was just one of one of many men in the outfit, as it were, and he knew that if he touched the daughter, then he would definitely be killed. But she tried to come on to him. He declined her advances, and then she basically made up a story and told her dad that he'd come on to her, and at the time her dad didn't really believe it, which is why he sent him away and didn't kill him. But he realises that Sasha really likes this guy, and actually he realises that Maxim really likes his daughter. So on his deathbed he ensures that they are arranged in marriage, but he also hands over all of Sasha's wealth to Maxim because Sasha inherits pretty much everything. He owns loads of oil fields, so she kind of becomes a billionaire, except he hands all the assets over to her husband Maxim for safekeeping, because he knows that if she has it for herself she'll be very much in danger and all of his enemies will try and get her and kill her. So he wants her to marry Maxim because also he knows that she'll be taken back to Chicago and kept safe. So this happens. Maxim takes Sasha back to Chicago. She is very, very angry about this situation. She doesn't understand why her father's done this. She wants the money for herself, and then stuff sort of happens to get in the way of their budding romance, but ultimately they get their HEA. So This is a relatively shortish book, slightly less than 300 pages, so really quick and easy read, and I enjoyed this one. I gave it 4 stars. Then I went on to read The Enforcer, which is book 3 in this series by Renee. Also bought this one on ebook. None of these books are on Kindle Unlimited. And then in this one we're following Oleg and Story, and like the title of the book suggests, Oleg is our enforcer, but he's also a silent hero. He doesn't speak, and we don't know why that is at first, but find out that he can't speak because he's had his tongue removed, and his tongue was removed by a former employer so that he couldn't spout any secrets, so he couldn't share any secrets basically. So this poor man has lived for very many years without a tongue, is unable to speak, but as a result deliberately hasn't tried to communicate with people. He went through a bit of a tough time, ended up in prison for a long time, can't really trust anyone, and didn't bother to learn how to communicate with people, and has very much lived his life happily in isolation, just doing what he needs to do to get through it. Now he's happy now. He's in the Chicago Black Bar. He's getting on with the guys, but he's not making too much effort to really be friends with them. Meanwhile though, he has got his eye on Story, and Story is a singer in a band. She plays guitar as well, and she plays at a local club, and Oleg never misses one of her gigs. He absolutely loves her playing, so he's kind of her best fan, and he always goes, sits in the audience, sits watching her, obviously never speaks to her, and he's been doing this for about a year. So Story is very much aware that this guy keeps coming to see her. She isn't creeped out by him though. He's not a lecturer or anything. He doesn't do anything untoward, except until one night she needs a lift home, and he offers to take her home, and at the same time he gets set upon by some evil men who are trying to basically kill him, and Story ends up having to kind of take him into her apartment, make sure that he's okay, and does a bit of caretaking for a couple of days because he's not well enough to kind of go back to you know, where he lives, to the mafia and things. And there they start a romance. Story finds out what happened to him, that he can't speak, and very much encourages him to come out of his shell, starts to learn how to communicate with him, and encourages him to communicate with his kind of friends and his colleagues in the mafia as well. Again, I really enjoyed this one. I thought it was a really unusual take, very clever, having this silent hero who doesn't really speak but is able to express quite a lot of emotions through his actions, which I really did enjoy, and also rated this one 4 stars. Then I went on to read The Devil I Don't Know by L.K. Shaw. This was another mafia romance, and it was book 1 in the Brooklyn Kings series, and we're following Jacob and Brenna. This was another relatively short one. It was much less than 300 pages from memory, so it was a very quick read. I enjoyed it. There was nothing wrong with it. I liked it, but it didn't blow me away. Could have been better, and rated this one 3 stars. Now, what we have in here is Jacob. He is the heir to a mafia family. He needs to be taken over when his father passes away, but he really doesn't want anything to do with the mafia. Something quite tragic happened to him, and he has kind of left. And for about 7 or 8 years he has been living a completely separate life away from the mafia. But he's now heard that his father is dying. His father's summoned him home, and his father says, now you've been away 7 or 8 years, you've had your chance to mourn and to grieve, and now it's time for you to step up, take over, and in order to gain a trust back with the family, we need to arrange you in marriage to another mafia family. And so I want you to marry our heroine in this book, Brenna. It's one of those sort of romances where he vows that he'll marry her, but it'll be in name only, and there can be no love between them, and he's not prepared to love again. But of course Brenna very much wants a relationship. She knows that she's in an arranged marriage, but she very much wants a relationship where he's open to spending time with her, getting feelings for her, and one day she hopes that they can be in a loving relationship. And of course we know that Jacob's not going to be able to stick to his promise, that he's not going to fall in love with her, because he's in close proximity with her, and he's not going to be able to help himself. So then I went on to read The Best Man by Sam Mariano. This is sort of a dark, erotic romance, I would say. It's novella length, so it is a shorter one, and in this one we're following Marcus and Jess. Now, I did enjoy this one. It kind of does what it says on the tin. It's exactly what you expect, so I rated this one 4 stars. It's a Sam Mariano, so of course the hero is going to be a little bit twisted, a little bit dark, so I do encourage you to read your trigger warnings when you go into this one. Sam always puts a really kind of good kind of like opening statement at the start of her books to describe her heroes a little bit more and what you can expect. So definitely read that before you go in. And so essentially in this one, the heroine is Jess. She is due to marry Marcus's brother. They are on their kind of bachelor nights. She gets home early from a bachelorette, comes home, gets into her fiance's bed, and then the boys came home from the bachelor party, but they bring the party with them and they have some strippers with them and stuff like that, and they are downstairs. Now, Marcus comes into the bedroom looking for something, realises Jess is home and in bed, and this is his opportunity because Marcus is absolutely in love with Jess. He doesn't believe that his brother deserves her, and so he kind of hatches a bit of a plan and convinces Jess that her fiance's kind of wildest sexual fantasy is that he would have anonymous sex with her. So he convinces her to let him tie her to the bed, turn off all the lights, just a tiny little bit of ambient light so no one can really see what she looks like, and then he puts a gag in her mouth and he goes away promising to bring back her fiance for a bit of a titillating evening, except he comes back with his dad, and then later with another brother, and later with another brother still, and so basically he kind of tricks them into believing that this is just kind of another stripper, some lady that has agreed to do this for their bachelor party, but really he's getting his brother's fiance to sleep with the whole family. So as I said, with Sam Mariano, this is very, very dark, very, very twisted. Marcus has absolutely got an agenda. He does get his own way. They do get a HEA, and I enjoyed the ride because that's what it was. It was a wild ride. So then I went on to read Toxic Love by Jagger, which is book 1 in his new series, Venomous Gods. And this is, again, is a mafia sort of book, but it's mafia adjacent because the main hero in this one is not strictly in the mafia, but he's the one that owns Club Venom, which is a sex club. And we've seen this in the previous series where some of the characters sort of frequented this club. And so he's quite a powerful man, very wealthy, powerful, but knows a lot of secrets about mafia organisations, politicians, etc. And so the mafia are not too happy about how much power he has. So the mafia strongly recommend that he gets married, and therefore Dante is ended up arranged in marriage to Tempest's aunt. Tempest is the heroine of this story, and the aunt in this one is actually younger than her, and Tempest absolutely wants to save her aunt from having to marry Dante, because she's only a young girl and recently turned 18, and she doesn't want her marrying a much older man because he's in his early 30s, and so she hatches a plan to intervene, and she is the one that ends up signing this kind of like blood contract that is unbreakable. You can't break it in mafia rules, and so therefore Tempest absolutely hitches her wagon to Dante. Dante is furious, but there's nothing he can do about it, and he ends up having to marry Tempest. Then they are obviously in close proximity with each other, and their relationship is going to go from there. There's lots of twists and turns in this one, lots going on with the plot in terms of some people they're trying to track down, what's going on with Tempest. She's got a bit of a backstory as well. I gave this one 4 stars because I did enjoy it, but there was bits in here that annoyed me because there was massive miscommunication between Tempest and Dante, things that could easily have been resolved and sorted out if they'd just spoken to each other, and also parts in the twisted, so there was a lot of twists and turns in the plot, but I felt like some of the storyline didn't 100% make sense in order to force this twist, and so there was times when Tempest and Dante could have told each other the truth. They found out certain things about each other, and instead of asking any questions or following up on it, like several weeks went by until something else happened in the story that then led them back to, you know, what they'd first discovered a couple of weeks before. So I felt it was a really weird sort of plot device in order to bring about like a plot twist, and it just annoyed me they just didn't communicate with each other. very well at all. Then I finished the audiobook for Fall Into You. This was a reread. This was 5 stars. It's a dark sort of contemporary billionaire romance, and I won't go into it in too much detail because I've talked about this one several times before. But basically it is book 2 in the Morally Grey series by J.T. Geissinger. The audiobook for this one was narrated by Jacob Morgan and Vanessa Moyen. They did a really, really good job. And the hero and heroine in this one are Cole and Shay. And Cole is our grumpy billionaire. He is the CFO of his family's company, and Shay comes to work for him as his kind of financial assistant. But they had a one-night stand prior to her starting working with him. They had amazing chemistry, they had really good banter between them, but Cole decided he was unable to pursue the relationship because he's a very dark man with a very dark secret, and then he's very taken aback when she comes to work for him. First thinks she's done it deliberately to try and trick him or trap him, and then they vow to stay away from each other in the workplace, but of course they're not going to be able to, and their romance goes from there. Then I moved on to The Tallest Tower by Emilia Finn. This is another mafia romance, and it's book 1 in the Underbelly Enchanted series. It's a new series that she's just started. However, it is kind of a spin-off, if you like, from another series that she writes, the Mayor Justice series. In this one we're following Felix, and he is head of the mafia, and Christabel, who is a journalist who is trying to uncover exactly what Felix's family are up to. She's trying to expose him as somebody in the mafia who's very much a criminal, and has been writing stories about him. He's not too happy that she's been writing stories about him, so what does he do? He does what any good mafia hero does. He kidnaps Christabel and holds her captive, and then once he's done that, he's not 100% sure what he's going to do with her. He realises his logic is completely flawed, but during their time together while she's in captivity, they learn more about each other. We learn more about their backstories, how they got to where they were. What I will say about this one is I really enjoyed this one. I really did. I gave it 4.5 stars. I really like Emilia Finn's writing, and it was really good to be in this world. Now, I've only read one book in the Mayor Justice series, and I think that was enough to get some cameos as well. So we get a lot of cameos in this one from characters from that series that come into this. So I think even if you just read one of those books, that's enough to understand kind of what's going on in this world and how everyone's connected and things like that. This book starts off quite horrifically. The first chapter is very, very disturbing, alarming, pearl clutching, and it really sets the tone for the rest of the book. So check your trigger warnings on this one. It isn't too dark though. Once you get past kind of the initial shock of the first chapter, I don't really think it's particularly a dark romance if you're into mafia romances. But like I said, I love the characters in this one. Love the way it played out, and we've really set up Felix's younger brother, who I believe is going to get his HEA in the next book. So looking forward to reading that one. Then I got an ARC for Seeds of Malice by Maggie Cole. I got it a couple of weeks before it was due out, and it was due out on the 1st of February. So by the time this video goes up, it is now live. This one is a dark bully romance, and it's book 1 in the Wilted Kingdom duet. So it's one part of a 2-part duet, and the second part comes out shortly later this month, I think on the 15th of February. Now, I don't usually like duets because, especially if the second book isn't out yet, because I don't really like to read 2 books about the same couple, but I really enjoyed the duet that Maggie Cole did last year, which was The Auction and the Vow, and I was really, really looking forward to this one because it seemed like it was going to be up my alley because it was a dark bully romance. However, I didn't like this book at all. It wasn't enjoyable to read for me, and I agonised over how I was going to review this one, thought about it long and hard. I didn't want to say anything too negatively about this book because I did receive it as an ARC, but the more I thought about it and I talked to some people about it, the more I realised I couldn't rate this book any higher than 2.5 stars. However, I am going to hold my judgment and my full review until I've read the second book. I'm very tempted to not even read the second book, but I feel like I really want to, because I really am hoping that Maggie Cole can turn this around. But essentially, for me, Dax is a very, very unlikable hero. I'm used to reading some very unlikable heroes, but there was nothing at all good about him that I could see. Now maybe something is going to be revealed in book 2 and we're going to have some sympathy for him and things are going to be turned around. But as it stands right now, Dax is completely unlikable, and I don't even really like the heroine Ivy that much, and I didn't really even have much sympathy for her, because essentially this is written like it's a dark bully romance. He is supposed to be extremely manipulative, and his end goal basically is to convince her to do a variety of sexual acts, record her and then expose her and kind of ruin her life. And he's going to do this for fun with his friends. He thinks it's absolutely hilarious. And you know, he's bored and wants something to do essentially, and that's all very well. I've read those types of heroes before with similar sorts of agendas. The thing is, it's very, very, Dax is so transparent, the manipulation is not at all sophisticated, and I just felt that Ivy was a complete and utter fool. There's no way you'd fall for it in real life. I know it's easy to be manipulated by people, but she's manipulated after 24 hours of knowing this person. That after 24 hours she just has to be with him, and you know, she'll do basically whatever he says, no matter the consequences. And I just didn't buy it, didn't like it. Like I say, it was far too sort of transparent, had no sympathy for Dax, he didn't have any redeemable qualities, and had no sympathy for Ivy either. The ending really, really made me angry, and like I say, I was debating whether or not to even continue with book 2, but I feel like I want to give it a chance, because it may be that the whole thing comes together, the whole thing's completely turned around, and I'll change my view on it. But as it stands right now, like I said, I didn't enjoy this book at all and won't be recommending it. So then I went on to read Wild Ace by Rebecca Gannon, and this is book 5 in the Cafano crime family series. It's a mafia romance, and in this one we're following Vinny and Lexi. Now I've really enjoyed this series so far. It's not the best mafia series I've read, but they're very, very easy reads, very, very palatable, and all the characters and everything are quite likeable. So I was really looking forward to this one. Now I really liked the hero in this one, and I was smiling throughout. I really was. It was such a sweet kind of romance, and I really, really liked it, and it was such a nice breath of fresh air from the previous book that I'd read and that I've just talked about, because the character was so lovely, so nice. Really, really enjoyed it. So basically Vinny is our hero, and he is one of the Cafano family. The Cafanos are like a crime family. The head of the mafia has 2 other brothers. One of the brothers is Alec, and Alec runs a casino in Atlantic City, and the hero in this one, Vinny, is his cousin, and he's kind of his second in command, looking after kind of not only the casino in Atlantic City but some other businesses in that area as well. And then Lexi is a young woman who lives in Atlantic City. She is in her last year of college, and she's lost her parents, so she's very much been brought up by her grandfather, who owns kind of this kind of like eatery, this bakery place in Atlantic City. Now her granddad's sick and he can't run his shop anymore, so she takes a little bit of a sabbatical from school, takes the last semester off to look after him, to help him run his business while he's back on his feet. And he encourages her very much to one night to go out. He's like, look, you've been helping me, you don't need to help me, I'm fine tonight, why don't you go out and have fun with your friends? And so she does, and that night she goes to a nightclub and she bumps into Vinny. They have one of those, they have a moment, they share a moment in this club. He asks her to dance, they very much have chemistry, they really, really kind of like take an instant like to each other. And then he asks if she wants to go up to the VIP room with him, and she's with a friend, and then the friend goes sort of with Vinny's brother, and they're all having a lovely time. And then unfortunately she gets a phone call from the hospital to say that her granddad is now in the hospital because his shop was kind of like, someone broke into his shop basically and robbed the shop, and so he has a bit of an injury and is now in hospital. And so Vinny offers to take her to the hospital. He sticks around. He knows who the baker is because Obviously he lived in Atlantic City all his life, and this bakery's got a very, very good reputation. And he's also pretty annoyed that someone robbed this place, because his family is supposed to be looking after all of the business people in town, and he's not too happy about it. So he decides that he's gonna not only encourage the police to look into this, but he's gonna start looking into it himself. And because he's taken a shine to Lexi, he decides to kind of help out, help do some repairs around the granddad's shop, and sort of encourage Lexi to go out on a few more dates with him. So like I say, he's a lovely, lovely guy. This romance is super sweet. I really, really enjoyed it. However, I only rated it 3.5 stars, and the main reason is because I did enjoy it, but it didn't blow me away. And also there was absolutely no mafia content. So this is a mafia romance. There was no mafia content. Literally, there wasn't any trouble. We didn't see any inner workings in terms of what was going on. We didn't see him at work. He didn't capture anyone. No one was tortured. No one was killed in this story. We didn't really even see too much of the rest of the family. And even the ending, which could have been like fairly suspenseful. You think, who are these robbers? They're going to come in and take her. Is he going to have to rescue her? None of that even happened. So this didn't really have a third act breakup. It was pretty placid and flat. It's not a particularly long book either. And so, like I say, while I did absolutely love this one, I was smiling throughout. I thought Brittany was super cute. Their romance was super cute. I just thought there was something missing. By the time I got to the end, I was a little bit disappointed. Like I say, there wasn't a bit more oomph to this story, and so therefore I rated 3.5 stars and rounded it up to 4 on Goodreads. Now, after reading A Sweet Story, but also having read Seeds of Malice, I thought to myself, I just want to read a really dark romance where the hero is despicable and he does it in a very sophisticated way. And who could possibly deliver on such a request but Sam Mariano, and I picked up Even If It Hurts. Now this has been on my TBR for a while, and it's book 1 in the Coastal Elite series. And now she's started to write a few more books in this series now, and so I really, really wanted to read this one and then catch up to some of the other stories. And this one is absolutely a dark romance, and it didn't disappoint from that perspective. I gave this one 4.5 stars. However, it wasn't a 5-star for me. Why? Because the hero was completely unlikable. So our hero in this one is Dare. You may have heard people talk about him before. They compare him to Carter Mahoney, who is the hero from Untouchable, which is another of Sam's works. But Dare is not at all like Carter, and unfortunately he's not at all likable. He is extremely manipulative, very toxic, and Aubrey genuinely does not have a choice where Dare is concerned, and he's definitely one of those heroes where he doesn't want anyone to fight back. He doesn't want anyone to question him, and while Aubrey does push him on a couple of occasions, he absolutely nips that in the bud as soon as he possibly can, and Aubrey learns that she just has to do it Dare's way or not at all. And this is one of the reasons I only gave it 4.5 stars, because this was a masterpiece. I thoroughly enjoyed it. The inner workings of Dare's mind was pretty scary, but like I say, this relationship was completely non-consensual. Aubrey has absolutely no choice, and I didn't feel that this was a true romance. Like, Aubrey and Dare do express love for each other, but I felt like literally Aubrey has no choice but to stay with him. He pretty much says to her, you will be mine forever, you're never escaping. Even if you wanted to escape, I will capture you, keep you captive. Literally, you cannot get away from me. And like I said, their relationship was very toxic, and therefore I don't really feel that Aubrey got a HEA out of this at all. She almost has to stay with him so that he doesn't, you know, unalive anyone who dares to come between them. And so, like I say, yeah, absolute masterpiece, absolutely loved it. An absolute lesson in how to write a bully romance, a manipulative hero. But like I said, unfortunately for me, Dare was just not likeable at all, which meant I couldn't give it the 5 stars I really wanted to give it, and settled for 4.5 instead. Then I picked up Sinners Anonymous by Sam Sketcher, and this is the last book on my TBR that I hadn't got to so far in January, so I wanted to get it in before the end of the month. This is another mafia romance. I'd heard loads of good things about this one. This is on my TBR for ages. I was going to read it for the Mafia Romance Readathon last year, and then I didn't get around to it. And then it was recommended to me during the Romance Readathon through the month of, I think it was August or September. Still didn't get around to it, and I ended up putting it into my TBR jar, and I picked it out for the month of January. And in this one we're following Rory and Angelo. Now Angelo is kind of a mafia hero. His father, in fact his father and his two uncles, so there was 3 brothers in total, they came to America from Italy. Boston and New York were already kind of taken, so they moved up the coast, and the idea is that they each took kind of a bit of a territory along the coast. And Angelo's father ended up with a town where there's a port, and so it's a very kind of rundown sort of town. For all intents and purposes it looks like you probably couldn't make a lot of money there, but because he's got a port, in fact his territory is kind of the most wealthy. But over the years the other sort of brothers have built up their territories. They're all living their own wonderful mafia lives, and then one day Angelo's father and mother in fact both die, and Angelo is due to step up and take over from his father, except Angelo doesn't want anything to do with the family business, and he decides that he is just going to kind of shut up shop and go to England, and that's what he does. However, he still owns the territory. His 2 uncles cannot operate in his territory whatsoever, but every now and then they come and say, can we use your port for this? Can we use your land for that? And they've recently come to him asking if they can use part of his land, which is basically covered in trees and forest and everything, because they want to build a casino on it, and he says no. But fate brings him back to town, and when he gets back he meets Rory, who is now his uncle's fiance. Now his uncle is in his 70s and Rory is only 21, so there's a massive age gap, and we soon discover that Rory is not marrying this guy because she likes him, or because he's got money, or any other reason than the fact that she is doing it to save her father and to save the forest. What she doesn't realise is that Angelo is the one that actually owns it, because the uncle has told her that he owns it, and has pretty much convinced her to marry him. In exchange, he says, if you marry me and give me your virginity, because she happens to be a virgin, then I will make sure that your land is safe and your father is looked after. And so she enters into this sort of bargain. Now when Angelo comes on the scene, he kind of figures out what's going on, and he kind of starts this relationship with Rory. They have lots of intimate moments together where they're kind of alone together. They're both intrigued by each other. She's sort of scared of him. He's trying to figure it out. He doesn't really know what her motivation is at first, and then they learn more about each other. Now, this was not the sort of book that I was expecting at all. It was so much better than I was thinking, because when you read the sort of the blurb, in my head I was thinking, oh, this is going to be, you know, she's married to the uncle, he's going to come back, live in the house, there's going to be lots of sexy time behind the uncle's back, and things are going to come to a head. That is not at all what happens. It's called Sinners Anonymous for a reason, and it's absolutely genius, because one of the reasons that Angelo's dad was so powerful and he did so well was because he was also sort of a deacon, like in this church, and he listened to people's confessions, and as a result he knew everyone's deepest, darkest secrets, and was able to blackmail people in the town pretty easily to do whatever they wanted. Now when Angelo shut up shop and he left, he decided that he was going to continue this whole confessional thing, and set up a hotline where people can ring up and confess all of their sins, and thereby him and his brothers have been listening to people's sins for many years, and they are using that information to their advantage. And now when Rory realises that this is the case and that Angelo could in fact listen to her sins, she starts to panic, because she has in fact been ringing the hotline pretty much on a regular basis, sharing the sins on the hotline. And so I just thought it was a really, really clever setup. It was a really interesting part of the story, part of the plot that I really, really did appreciate. I hadn't read anything like that before. I thought that was absolutely fantastic. Of course, loads of other things go down. This is a romance. Rory and Angelo do end up together. Spoilers, and really enjoy this one, and rated it 4 stars. Now, I have looked at the future books, and books 2 and 3 are out, but that's a duet for one of the brothers, and then the books 4 and 5 are also going to be a duet. That's what it looks like on Amazon, but the author has not written those books yet, and it's been several years since the last instalment, so I probably won't continue on with this series for now, but I'll keep an eye on it, and if she writes any more, because I'm very interested in reading about one brother in particular, and that's the books that aren't written yet, so I'll just keep my eye on that, and if they do, then I'll definitely pick it up and I'll let you know how I get on. Right, just 2 more to go. The first one is Denial by Ali Marr. This is a novella. It's an erotic romance, and it's book 1 in the Kink Kotica series. Now, I don't even know what the heroine's name is in this one, because I flicked through the book and couldn't find her name. I think she definitely does have one, but it wasn't obvious for me to find. But the hero in this one is David. Now, David and the heroine, we'll call her, have been married for a long time, and they have a dom-sub dynamic, and she is actually the dom, so he's the sub in this relationship, and they've tried all different types of scenarios and scenes with each other over the years, and like I said, they've been married a long time, and this is very much a story about them rekindling their magic, their chemistry. They are very much in love, they do get on really, really well, but they're kind of a little bit of a spark has been lost from their relationship, and so David asks his wife if she will cage him, so basically put a cock cage on, and not tell him when she's going to take it off, and then she sets about kind of teasing him until he absolutely breaks and begs her to let him out. I thought it was a really, really interesting look at this particular kink. I really appreciated the fact that this was about a married couple, and there's not much else to say about this book other than it does exactly what it says on the tin. It's exactly what you'd expect it to be, and as a result, I rated it 4 stars. And then the final book that I want to talk about is Rules of Engagement by J.T. Geissinger. This one is I guess a sports romance. It's a contemporary romance. I'm saying sports romance, we don't see anything of the sport really, but the hero in this one, Mason, is the quarterback of a football team, and that's as sporty as this one gets. But I absolutely loved this one. I actually listened to it as an audiobook. It's narrated by Sebastian York and Andy Arnott, and I rated it 4.5 stars. So the hero in this one, Mason, he is the grumpiest hero I think I've ever read. He only has 1 volume, which is a shout. He just literally shouts at everybody, and he's got a massive chip on his shoulder. We later find out that he's had quite a traumatic upbringing. He's got a big chip on his shoulder, and also doesn't particularly like himself, doesn't understand his true worth, I guess, as a result, and has, although he has successfully been drafted in the NFL, he's a very, very good quarterback. He isn't particularly very teammatey, because he is, like I say, he's got this chip on his shoulder. He doesn't really play very well with the team. He gets himself into a lot of trouble. He's got a bad reputation in the press, and as a result, his agent suggests to him that he should get married to smooth things over and to ensure that he doesn't lose any more sponsorships. And that's where the heroine in this one comes in, Maddie. Maddie runs a kind of a dating agency. It's kind of a matchmaker service, and she very much believes in love. She wears pink. Her office is completely pink, but she's very prim and proper, you know, high-waisted tops, all pink of course, pearls, her hair in a bun, glasses on, everything's orderly, everything's neat, and everyone has matching numbers. So she pairs up people who look good on paper, and of course Mason and Maddie do not match on paper whatsoever, but she is desperately trying to find Mason a wife, but they enter into a bit of a sparring relationship. J.T. Geissinger does the sparring so well, and the banter between couples, and this book is no exception. Maddie and Mason really go at it. Maddie is really trying to coach Mason into being a better boyfriend, and encouraging him to be nicer to the women that he's supposed to go on dates with. But of course, the more time they actually spend together, the more they realise they really like each other. And she tries to convince herself that he's absolutely not for her, but you know, that's not gonna last too long. The other thing about this I really like, and JT Geissinger I think does this really well as well, is she writes some amazing side characters. Mason's agent in this one, Dick, is a wonderful character, and he very much colludes with Maddie's auntie, who is completely crazy herself. She is a delightful lady who, you know, sees auras and communes with the spirits, and you know, looks for signs and things like that. And her and Dick very much collude with each other to push Maddie and Mason together, cause a few little problems. It's very, very funny though, and like I say, some great characters. And what I really appreciated about this is there comes a point where there's going to be a potential for a massive third act breakup, and instead of believing a lie that Maddie hears about Mason, she decides that she's going to stick up for him, and not fall for someone else's sort of tricks, someone else's lies, and absolutely loved that. And the way she stood up for Mason, the way she really defended him was absolutely fantastic. Loved every moment of it. Had me smiling while I was listening to this, driving along in the car. And like I say, rated this one 4.5 stars and rounded it up to 5 stars on Goodreads. So there we are. I think I've been filming for well over an hour. I'm going to try and cut it down, probably turn out around the hour mark if I can cut some bits out of this. But that's all of the books I read at the end of December and throughout January. Had a fantastic reading month. Now there's one more thing that I need to do before I let you go, and that is to announce the winners of my birthday giveaway competition. So I want to say thank you very much to everyone who entered my birthday giveaway competition. That was to win a book of your choice from either my top 10 books of 2023 or my book top 8 Mafia romances of 2023. I had over 30 entries, so not too many, but thank you very much to everyone who did enter. I entered you all into a prize draw. I spun the wheel. I'm going to cut to a clip of me spinning the wheel to reveal the winners, but I just want to say massive congratulations to the winners. I've ordered the books. They'll be on their way to you in the next couple of weeks. And I hope you enjoy them as much as I did. Right, so it's really exciting. We are now going to pick our winners for the birthday and anniversary giveaway. We're going to pick 3 winners. And so I've entered all of the names into this wheel of names. I'm going to spin the wheel shortly. I'm going to pick 3 winners at random. And in total we had 33 entries. So there is a really good chance that if you did enter the competition, you will actually win something. So without further ado, let's spin the wheel. So our first winner is Books Is My Happy Place. So well done. I'll be in touch with you shortly to let you know you've won, and to get the details so I can post that book out to you. So I'm going to remove Book Is My Happy Place from the wheel, and I'm going to spin the wheel again for our second winner. And our second winner is Mrs. Jen Dahl. So congratulations to you. I'll get your book out to you shortly. And then finally, the final winner is Norwater 7827. So congratulations. So congratulations to all 3 of you. Book Is My Happy Place, Mrs. Jen Dahl and Norwater 7827. I'll be in touch with you very soon to arrange to get your books to you. So thank you very much to everybody who took part. I really appreciate your support. And back to the video. So there we go. Hopefully you saw me spin the wheel, so you can see it was all above board and completely fair and completely random as well. So once again, congratulations to the winners. I've already ordered your books. As soon as they arrive with me, I'll get them back out in the post to you and let you know the tracking numbers. That really is all I've got for you today. So thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this, please give it a thumbs up, and remember to subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content from me. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Because her uncle, you know, had a child much later, her, because her granddad ended up having a child much later. Was it a granddad? Would it be a granddad? Oh no, he's not arranged. He's not married to the sister. To put on a blindfold, wear a, no, not a blindfold. So he convinced. I keep doing that with my hair. I don't like. It's a bit there. Anyway, I absolutely loved this series. It was absolutely fantastic. In fact, here it is. Right. So then, kind of is a bit of a vigilante,